a ranch woman who just said, Elaine, I just seem to be the only one who cares about getting this transition plan activated. Men in our team are busy working and doing their things that they wanted to be doing, but it's very hard to get them to come to the table.
Something that also happens, Elaine, is that when there is a lot of dynamics that are dysfunctional, as the one that if you have a villain constantly talking heavy stuff onto everybody at the family, you start becoming very resentful, but also very insensitive to what other people feel.
Welcome to the Farm Family Harmony podcast. I'm Elaine Froese, Farm Family Coach, here with another episode full of transition tips, tactics, and sometimes hard truths to get harmony on your farm. Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Farm Family Harmony podcast. I'm Elaine Froese, your host, and I'm excited today to have one of my teammates with me, Crisol Gonzalez, who lives on a dairy farm in Mexico, about an hour and a bit away from Chihuahua. I've been to that farm, and it's exciting to see how her and Gerardo are building a very interesting and integrated dairy business in a joint venture. So, Crisol, today, our theme is effective or good family meetings, and everyone always knows and thinks about communication. And so you and I have been working in our membership site with many families who come for group coaching on Tuesdays. And one of the things that you brought to the fore was the drama triangle, and it really struck a nerve with a lot of the people in the group. So let's get started there and talk about what the drama triangle is, how you discovered it, and how it works in families.
Yeah. Hello to everyone. Yeah, I think this is a very interesting topic. When I came across it is the first person that came across this description of the type of relationships that we have as a families, and not only families, but also group of people at the office, friends. So it is Stephen Karpman in the 60s. And the interest, what his approach to this type of dynamics is that usually in the dynamics, we start playing these different roles. And he observed that in these relationships, something started to shift and created some dysfunction in the relationship. And somebody or someone, and I think that the very important thing to talk about this is that this is not a tool to stigmatize or label people,
right?
And say, oh, this person is always a victim,
right?
This framework, it is like a introspective tool, and it should be used as a mirror when to look at us. How do we react? And that every time we start a new interaction, or we are in the middle of a conflict, that we can see, okay, what type of role am I playing here? Why is this relationship maybe being kind of rocky? It's because I can, and this theory talks about 3 different roles. And the first one is the victim.
Oh,
yeah.
The daughter-in-law, the dad, the son-in-law. Pick a player in a farm family.
It can be anyone, especially if we want to start just reflecting on our own personal lives. We have everybody of us has at some point been the victim, and the victim role is when you see yourself as powerless, as you don't have any type of influence or capacity to change the situation where you're at. You are very low on creativity. You start blaming. That is the thing that the victim does a lot. like he or she are never responsible for their circumstances. They are always seeking for someone to be the responsible one.
So let's just pause for a second and let people digest that. And the question is, who in your family meeting or who in your farm family business team is playing the victim role, and who's blaming others and not taking accountability for their own actions? So we'll just let people sit with that. So what's another role that's part of the triangle?
Yeah, the next one is the villain. And the villain, yeah, the bad guy, or in this case, yeah, it is the person that always also seeks to blame other people. They feel strong and they feel very competent when they can point out the things that need to be like adjusted or fixed, and they seek out to control people. And it never comes from a place of supporting people, but to blame them and criticize them. And they see the others as enemies that they need to conquer.
So I'm just going to interject, because the theme of this podcast is around having effective farm family meetings and be able to start conversations. So if you're coming into a meeting with that persona of being the villain and needing to control and having lots of judgment and throwing blame, it's no wonder that a lot of our farm families say, Elaine, it's been a lot more helpful to have one of your coaches facilitate these family meetings, because we just can't do it on our own, because we get together and things very quickly start to get heated, and then kaboom, there's a communication explosion, the bomb goes off, people walk out, and nothing seems to get accomplished. So who's going to shift this? There's got to be another role.
I think we still need to. It is a drama triangle, so we need just to firstly pause at the next one, and the next one is very interesting because you would see the hero as someone positive. That's someone that why is a hero a problem in a drama triangle, and this is the thing. The hero is someone who seeks temporary relief to the situation. It looks for people to need to be saved. And who do you think in this drama triangle always have like a special bond with the hero? Mm-hmm. The victim. Mm-hmm. The victim seeks someone that fixes their problem, and the hero is that person that enables those quick reliefs and fixings to the situation. But the thing with the hero is that they drown themselves in supporting other people and fixing others, the problems from other people.
Okay.
And yeah, the thing that you can already think that happens to heroes is they burn out very easily.
So an interesting comment we had this week in our membership coaching site was a ranch woman who just said, Elaine, I just seem to be the only one who cares about getting this transition plan activated. Men in our team are busy working and doing their things that they wanted to be doing, but it's very hard to get them to come to the table. So I think that's the bridge in our conversation right now, Crisol, is if you want to have an effective farm family meeting and you're getting burned out because you happen to be the one trying to get people to the table and it's not working, what are your suggestions for understanding this triangle, but also looking at the conversation starters to get people committed to come to the table?
That is a very interesting situation. I think the first thing is that we realize what kind of roles we are playing in the family dynamic. Okay. Because very often, and this is like just a personal perspective, but I see women in farming families being some kind of like the heroes, kind of like playing. And we always see, and you can talk more about this in your coaching practice, Elaine, that women very often end up being that triangulates the communication between.
Yeah, what we call the monkey, or well, one ranch woman said, Elaine, I'm tired of being the pig in the middle, right?
Yeah.
When I'm speaking, I sometimes talk about, with a son or daughter's coming in this door and the father's coming in this door, and they're both, and mom's the one in the middle, and she's really tired of being the mediator or the chief social worker of the family.
Yeah. And that is exactly what this person, Karpman, talked about. Like, it just don't stay at the drama triangle, because only situating what is the conflict, what are the dynamics that are not nurturing our relationships, what can be shifted toward, like what can be changed, what can be moved on. And I think the first step to make this movement from the drama triangle to the dynamic, that is the dynamic, what is it? I forgot it, like, but it's like the dynamic TED is the empowerment dynamic. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you need to be aware where is your role. Second, you need to be present to the feelings that you're experiencing in that moment.
Yeah.
And why is this important? Because when if we don't become aware that when we are in this drama triangle, we are always skipping and shifting and moving from being present to the feelings that we are having.
Well, I think also, Crisol, you and I have seen in family meetings where people get triggered very quickly, right? Because if they have this villain mentality, poor me, I'm the one who's always getting blamed and picked on, whatever. And as a coach, you're saying, look, Charlie or Jane, you get to choose your response. And again, acknowledgement of feelings is something I think we've talked about in this podcast before many times, of the work of Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, where he talks about nonviolent communication. And part of that is observing what's going on and then recognizing what you're feeling. How does this make you feel? I feel frustrated. I feel anxious. I feel disappointed. I feel hopeless, whatever the feeling is, because you're not getting traction and people aren't showing up in a healthy way of communication. Or what people probably don't know about you, Crisol, is you work in your local school system as well, and you work in circles, and you do a lot of conflict resolution training and mediation type work. And the other thing I think that's interesting about your mind and your brain is that you're actually a lawyer by training. So your personal way that you are wired is both left brain, right brain are very, very strong on the logistics, analytical side, but also on the creative, emotional side. So give us some hints about this staying present part in having an effective meeting. What needs to be in place? I think we've talked maybe before about the container that you talk about, what needs to happen. So just remind us about good conversation starters in effective family meetings.
Yeah. Well, something that was very interesting for me to learn is that the difference between an emotion and in Spanish, and a feeling.
Okay.
The emotion, and if you like to go to the movies, now is right, that movie up Inside Out, and maybe you have seen it. It's a children's movie, but I haven't found anything that is clear to identify and explain how the brain works and how is different an emotion to a feeling. Because the emotion is that even like the physical reaction, chemical reaction that we have when we are very happy, when we are very sad, when we are angry. But the feeling is when we have that emotion, what are the information that I already put it on? Like, oh yeah,
or the meaning. Yeah.
Yeah, the meaning. The all the past situations. Oh yeah, he's going to be so mad, or she's going to start blaming everybody because this happened and I better avoid it, or and then I feel overwhelmed or I feel anxious. And I think that when we understand that an emotion is only like, it lasts from 15 to 20 seconds.
Okay.
then I can start building up the skills of saying, I'm going to be in this meeting. I think I've learned that I become very easily triggered by these issues and acknowledge it. And then also even think, what can I do to bring myself into my center if I get triggered and I start feeling like very angry, very frustrated with the situation? Can I do some breathing practices? We do that a lot with the children about like social emotional learning. I can also say, hey, I'm feeling very stressed or very, very like with a lot of emotions. Give me 5 minutes to go outside, even wash your hands, wash your face, eat something that can really, again, bring you back to your center, and then not ignore what just happened, but say, what caused me this emotion? What caused me this reaction? And how can I phrase it? Because that is the next step that I wanted to talk about. And you mentioned it already, responsibility. You said at the beginning, you can choose how to react to a situation.
You always get to choose your response. Good lesson.
Yeah. And I think like that is the part that sometimes when I think it was one of the podcasts, someone just posted a comment under one of the podcasts that we had, said, yeah, but the things about feelings, it is kind of like tricky because we cannot live by taking decisions by our feelings, but they are there. And as soon we are not aware of them, we are going to start reacting of them like in a very unconscious way.
Well, and that's interesting too, Crisol, because I've heard very high level farmer coaches say, oh, let's just keep the emotion out of business and everything will be decided really quickly. And I'm screaming from my car, no, we have to recognize what's going on inside. And again, you and I, as a part of our Farm Family Coach team, use a tool called the conflict dynamic profile. And one of the positive ways of being unstoppable in conflict is the ability and the skill to express emotion and to know what internally, because you said this whole process of the triangle is an internal process. It's an awareness of what's going on for you. What are you thinking, feeling, needing, and wanting? And then the mirror you hold up is, wow, that really hooked me in here. I wonder what that was about, right? And so we're not therapists. We're not psychologists. We always say counseling is about recovery, but coaching is about discovery. And I like the fact that you said, take some time, wash your face, wash your hands, go out, get fresh air, eat something to return to center. And there's another podcast that we've done with Patricia Morgan, and her book is called Return to Center. And she is a trained therapist. So it's an interesting expression, right, of how you stay grounded. So what other tips do you have for farm families to have better family meetings, to stay grounded, to return to center, and to be able to talk about the tough issues they need to address?
I think you have already talked about this. I don't know how many times, I think, but you've always say about writing things before you say it. It is a very powerful tool because they are these very, sometimes when I hear some families, they are these very deep rooted, very old emotions and feelings, and like more feelings about that will not become real until we start verbalizing. And maybe a first step is to writing them down. Because if you don't bring it to the reality where you can read it, where you have the exercise to writing it, it is a very it won't be real for you to say, hey, Dad, I need some appreciation, recognition for what I have. Even to just say, hey, Dad, I am very thankful for what you have taught me in life. Sometimes to say those things to the people that we care the most are the most difficult, because we we grew up in a situation that made us feel or think that what we felt wasn't important. So to start bringing those situations and thinkings, thoughts, and feelings for the people that we work every day together, it is a very powerful way to also start that communication without even interacting with the person.
And I think for some people too, the way they like to process hard information, Crisol, is that gives them a way to read the letter or to read the writing and process the message, and think about it before they're going to choose what their response is going to be. And I've written a blog that people can access off our website called The Power of a Letter. And that's another situation that I can recall at a family meeting where a widow was really distraught. Her husband died with cancer about 4 months after we had a coaching family meeting. And she said, Elaine, I need your help again because my children aren't happy with the way the estate plan was done, but I need them to sit down and process this with me at the table together, face to face. So her approach was to actually write her opening lines and her script. So that's another way you can use it before the meeting to address what your concerns are and what you want to see happen at the meeting. But you can also use it in present time, I think, when you think that it's going to cause some emotion. And a lot of women I met I said, oh, I'm going to cry. And I said, that's great. Crying is good for men and women in terms of expressing how serious this issue is for you and what you feel about it. But it gave her something to center herself with to start the meeting off so that she wouldn't miss all the things that she wanted to tell her children.
Yeah, and just exactly what you mentioned about expressing what they wanted to say in a paper. I think we can add this to the notes for this podcast. I made this template for designing a conversation, and I think that is a very good way to, when you are going to have that conversation, you feel a lot of maybe anxiety of what is going to be the reaction and what is going to be my answer. And we start like building this ideas that and that is just anxiety, right? So we are going to add that tool to design the conversation, as it is a very good way and exercise to see the things, to reflect and process the things that you want to talk about. And I think also other tool that maybe for people that are not so much into writing things, use voice notes on your cell phone. You can record yourself saying something and then listen to you again. And if you don't like it, you just erase it. But it's a very good way to like mirror yourself practicing how I'm going to give this feedback to my son. And like talking about feedback, it is a very important thing that sometimes when we think, when we are about giving feedback, that is something that occurs a lot in the family meetings. We need to be very conscious that feedback should come not from a villain stance.
No, okay.
But as a coach, that maybe we will talk about the empowerment dynamic in another podcast because we only talked about the drama triangle today. But the thing to give feedback is, am I asking for permission to the person that is going to receive the feedback if he or she is in a good mental state to receive the feedback?
And I'll just interject. I have an example of that, Crisol, from our own farm family, where our son is in his mid-30s and working with my husband, his father, who is stepping back without stepping away. And many times Wes will say to Ian, who's our son, he'll say, do you want my feedback or do you want my opinion? And he'll say yes, or he'll say no. And that's really a good tool for my husband because when it comes to the seed business and the crops, there's lots of sharing and opinions. But then when it comes to things that maybe have to do with his house and the lack of landscaping and things around his house and how he and his spouse want to do that, then he doesn't want an opinion. So I think that's a really good tool. Even if people just took that one nugget from today's podcast about asking for permission, is now a good time to talk.
And if the other person says, right now is not good, then maybe just ask when would be a good time to talk about this. And I think that is feedback is a very vulnerable place, or it's a very vulnerable conversation, because you are in some way not judging, but you are sharing your perspective on how a person makes something. And that is always very deep for somebody, because we always want to make the best for the farm. And when we hear something hard, we need to be in the best mental state so we can process that in a positive way and not feeling it as, oh, I'm not doing anything right in this family.
Well, and I think too, Crisol, basic conflict 101, which we've talked about before, is what is your intent? So my intent with my husband or my son or my daughter-in-law is never to hurt and never to cause harm. But my intent is to be clear and to express whatever needs to be expressed. And like Brene Brown says, being clear is kind. But you have to do it in the tone of voice too that is kind and respectful. And it just amazes me after decades of coaching farm families that people can still be so disrespectful and unkind to each other.
Yeah, and I think something that also happens, Elaine, is that when there is a lot of like dynamics that are like dysfunctional, as the one that if you have a villain constantly talking heavy stuff onto everybody at the family, you start becoming very resentful, but also very insensitive to what other people feel. And that is a hard thing to do. And I am speaking about myself. Like when you have people that maybe you feel isn't always caring or acting in a caring way with the family, it's very difficult to be empathic about it. But the invitation there is to really invite them to the dynamic and the culture that you want to create. And I just want to finish this thought. The culture change that happens and what you want to, as a family, to happen in your farm family needs to be also not always just pointing out the bad things that you want, but actually doing the things that you want. And so that the family, the culture starts moving in a direction, and the people who doesn't want to go in that direction are going to notice that, hey, everybody is moving in this direction. Do I want to join them? Or what is the other option? And I think that is a very important thing also to be aware that in families, you can change the culture. Not because the things always have been in a specific way. You cannot start doing some changes. And that is going to open a lot of very interesting and powerful conversations to really say, this is the way that we want to treat each other. This is the way that we want to even like show up to the world. And a very good friend of my husband said, at home, and in Spanish, this is the saying that says, at home, we wash the dirty clothing or the dirty rags. Yeah. And outside of the family, we support each other and we hold our backs.
Okay.
And sometimes we do it the opposite. We wash the dirty clothes on the outside with the neighbor, with the friends, with the pastor. And at the family, we don't say the things. We only play on the outside and we don't have the hard conversations in the inside. So,
well, it's interesting. There's a saying like that in Spanish. Can you say it in Spanish for us?
Sí, la ropa sucia se lava en casa. So the dirty clothes are washed at home, not outside of it.
Because I wanted to hear it in Spanish. It's a beautiful language. The other thing that I think her name is Marcia Harris. She's a marriage therapist from Brandon. I don't know if she's still practicing, but she always said that she could tell if a couple was going to make it within the first 15 minutes if she could decipher whether or not they had each other's back. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a good place to close off today's conversation with this podcast, Crisol, you've given us lots to think about. And I think the nuggets for me are we get to choose our response. And you mentioned the importance of culture. We've talked about culture before being what you believe to be true. So does everybody value the same thing? Do they want to go in the same direction? The next piece is how they behave with each other. So check your behavior. And are you getting into this villain role or victim role, or even a rescuing hero who is not being helpful? Because you mentioned the word enabling. And I think I want to speak hope into the farm women in agriculture that are listening to this podcast to think about, are you getting what you need, and do you really know what you need? And if you keep asking for what you need and it isn't satisfied, then what are your options to satisfy it yourself and let the other people go keep doing what they're doing, but you decide to do something that fills your well up too. And I think a lot of farm women listening to this are going to say, oh, I still need to have that family meeting. I still need to have these decisions, but hopefully they'll have some insights and writing their thoughts and feelings down, as you suggested, on a script or in a letter to start processing those tough conversations, and also accepting the fact that none of us are perfect. So we all need feedback too, right? On how we can shift going forward. So Crisol, just as we close off, can you explain to folks about the Farm Family membership site and what you've observed with the breakout rooms in that way of doing group coaching? Because I think a lot of people would be curious about what we're doing.
Yeah, I think it is a very powerful and interesting way of interacting with people that is going through the same things that we are experiencing in our families. I always appreciate the wisdom that happens in the breakout rooms, and I really like this idea, and I'm very visual. So what I feel the membership is a cross-pollinating space. I am learning from Canada's farming operations. I can see it from my Mexican farming perspective. And then you have the women side of the family, the men, the younger generation. We have like couples that are sitting together in the same room and having very interesting conversations right there. But also some families that take the space for each of them, interact in different breakout rooms. And then maybe I really think that they have, after the meeting or after the call, they can have very powerful and interesting conversations because everybody got something different from their breakout room, from the conversations they had. And I think that kind of, sometimes we feel that change is just like a big leap. And the change, starts with these small shiftings. And it's like this grade that at the beginning, maybe it's going to look very differently. But if we make this like in an exponential way, or look at it like a farther situation, we are going to end up in a very different place than what we started from. And I think the membership is those glimpses of shift and on every call.
So thank you, Crisol, for showing up at those membership coaching calls every Tuesday. And folks, we'd like you to join us. The gate will open, the cart will open again in October. And we want you to know that you don't have to be alone. And our podcasts are also meant to be shared. So please share this with the rest of your family or talk about it at the supper table. And we wish you all well in your journey, and know that it's your farm, it's your family, and it's your choice. And we are here at farmfamilycoach.com to help you find harmony through understanding. So thank you, Crisol, for your time today. And folks, stay well and do some work as to the nuggets that you gleaned from today's podcast. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.